Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and today we're going back to the 2022 MLB play-by-play data to take a look at some different runner situations and see what happens. Today I'm looking at runners on third or second and third. What happens when there's ground balls in the infield? Does the runner on third score? Does he hold? Or is there a force at home? That kind of thing. And the reason I chose third and second and third is because in both those cases there would not be a force. So, how often does that runner on third, when there's not a force out, go home on the play? How often do they stay, and that kind of thing? I'm going to do another video where I take a look at runners on first and third, because that throws the complication in there for the defense of whether to go for the double play or whether to get the out at home if the runner on third is trying to score. But that'll be a future video. I've already done bases loaded, but in that case, of course, there was a force out at home, so the runner on third had to go on ground ball in the infield. So with all that said, let's take a look. All right, so if you're familiar with my videos, you kind of know the format that I do here and how the data looks, or how I break this down. But if you're new here, let me explain really quickly. Basically, what you'll see is two different charts. The top one will have the raw data, the number of cases or number of balls that result in that play. And then the bottom one's percentages. And the percentages kind of help us see the differences between balls hit to various fielders and the outcomes that result. Of course, all of this is based on 2022 MLB play-by-play data from Retro Sheet. I have other videos on how to download that if you're curious. But that's kind of the breakdown. The other thing, the other kind of caveats are that I only know the final outcome of the play. So sometimes the final outcome of the play may not tell us everything that happened during the play, if that makes sense. So in this case, I've broken it down between 0 outs and 1 out because just to see if there was a difference on runner on third trying to score based on the out situation. So this top one we'll look at is with no outs, and we see there were 211 total ground out chances or plays with a runner on third or second and third with no outs in all of last season. And you kind of see the distribution there. So if we take a look at the distribution, 28% of plays were to second base, 27% by the shortstop. That's the fielder that first fielded the ball. I should break that down too for you. So 17% to the corner infielders, roughly, and then a little less than 10% to the pitcher, and a little over 1.5, or a little less than 1.5% to the catcher. So not very many plays, 3 plays total that the catcher fielded, which makes sense because the catcher is probably not going to range out to get a ball with a runner on third, so very often. So as we can see, and the three main categories that I broke this down into that I found to be important were: does the runner on third hold at third? Does the runner at third, is he out at home trying to score? Or does the runner on third score? And within runner on third scoring, either the runner on third scores because there's a play made on a different or an out made at a different base. So if the second baseman threw to first to get the force out, for example, and the runner on third scored, then the runner on that would be in the runner on third scores category. Play on runner scores means that they tried to make a play either at home to get the runner trying to score. Most likely that was the case. They tried to throw to get the runner at home. They didn't get any outs on the play, but the runner on third scored. Usually those are, I think, are classified as fielder's choices in the play-by-play data because the fielder made a choice to go after a different, to go for a different out other than the easy out at first base. Play on runner scores, there aren't as many as those. There were only 7 total. Most of the time, they're not making a play and everybody's safe, if that makes sense. All right, so overall we can see that with no outs, over half the time the runner on third holds on ground balls in the infield overall. Of course, we're going to see that there's a difference in breakdown between who fields the ball and what happens. A little over 5% of the time there's an out at home. because the runner on third tried to make it home and was thrown out. And then over a third of the time, almost 38% of the time, the runner on third scores. Now, if we look at the breakdown by position, we can see that if the ball is hit back to the pitcher, 9 times out of 10, the runner on third holds, which makes sense because usually if the pitcher's fielding it, it's closer to home plate, and so the runner probably doesn't expect that he'll have an easy chance of making it home. 2/3 of the time when the catcher fields it, the runner holds, but keep in mind that that's only 2 times out of 3. So even though you have to kind of combine looking at the percentages and looking at the raw data to see the actual numbers here in these cases, a lot of these cases, because the sample size is so small. The corner infielders, actually, we'll go right side, left side. On the right side, first and second base, we can see around half the time, a little bit more for first, a little bit less for second, the runner holds. Likewise, the runner's scoring the other times, other than the couple of percentage of the time against, again, only 1 or 2 cases where they were out at home. And if we look at third and second, similar breakdown. To third, of course, the runner's holding 7 times out of 10 because if the ball's hit that way, third baseman's fielding, the runner on third is so close that he probably isn't going to try to score, especially with no outs. So he's holding up. Whereas shortstop, we can see almost half the time he's scoring there, just like to second base, because those 2 middle infield positions are furthest from home plate. So he's more than likely going to make it, especially if he's running on the pitch. The second he sees a grounder that's going to shortstop, half the time he's probably running and he's going to score on it. So again, that's with no outs. Now let's take a look and see if there's a difference with 1 out. Let me get this back into field here. So there were many more plays with 1 out, 541 ground out chances in the case where there was a runner on third or second and third with 1 out. And we can see that the percentages overall, the runner's holding way less. So the runner held over half the time with no outs, but the runner's only holding less than a third of the time with 1 out. 20% of the time he's out at home, so a fifth of the time he's out at home, and almost half the time he's scoring. So they're scoring more often. They're holding less often. There's more plays at the plate. And again, if logic and reason suggest that with 1 out and a grounder in the infield, that the offense doesn't want to waste the opportunity of having a runner on third. So they're going to be more risky with 1 out because that runner on third, that run is more important with 1 out than it is no outs. With no outs, there's a ground ball. You're figuring, well, we have 2 more outs to score that guy from third. With 1 out, though, they're not as conservative. And again, if we look at the breakdown by position, again, balls hit back to the pitcher almost half of the time the runner's holding. But that's the most of any position other than catcher, which again is only 4 out of 5 times. Balls hit to first base, they're scoring over half the time. Balls hit to second base, they're scoring 60% of the time. Balls hit to short, they're scoring over half the time. Third is a little bit of an outlier here because, again, if a grounder's hit to third, that runner on third is probably being a little bit more cautious because a third baseman has an easier play on him than the other positions would. So even third base, though, almost 40% of the time with 1 out, the runner is scoring. This runner is scoring. Way more outs at home because there's a play at the plate. So the runner's taking a lot more chances with 1 out than with no outs, which again makes sense for all the reasons I mentioned. So yeah, I'd say overall, I don't know if it really surprised me at all. I don't think it really surprised me that much. I would have figured this breakdown. It kind of made sense. But interesting to note that with no outs and a runner on third or second and third, the runner's only scoring less than 40% of the time on a grounder in the infield. Of course, that varies based on position, as I've shown. Whereas with one out, the chance of scoring, or at least attempting to score, goes way up. If we combine the outs at home and total scores, 7 out of 10 times there's going to be the runner on third is going to be trying to score with one out. Whereas less than half the time is the runner on third going to try to score with no outs. All right, so just a little quick wrap up there to talk about runners on third or second and third with ground outs. Let me know if there's anything in the data that surprised you. Leave those comments down below. If there's a different base runner situation you'd like to see me take a look at, or just different plays in general, let me know that. I've done a number of different plays. I've done grounders in the infield. I've done bunts. I've done infield errors, runners tagging up, and sac flies, and that kind of thing. So, and runner advancements on base hits, like first to third or second to home on base hits, that kind of thing. So I will leave things there. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, consider clicking the like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other breakdowns like this. I do have a solo league using Payoff Pitch Baseball that I'm going through right now with mostly teams of Hall of Famers and teams of great players that aren't in the Hall of Fame. You can check that out over at baseballmaelstrom.com to see all the stats and keep up on that league. I also do recaps of each day's games, video a week roughly. So you can check those out here on the channel as well. But thanks again for watching, and until next time, have a great evening.